Hello there, welcome to another episode of World of Tanks with Gainy Titan. We're here on Prokhorovka winter map and I'm in the AT-15 working on some crew skills so as to put it onto the Turtles later on so the Turtles won't be quite so bad. I'm also taking the opportunity to grind out the Rheinmetall Borsig and the ISU 152. Not sure what ammo loadout I'm taking on the IS-2 152. Anyway, it's been a while since I've been on the AT-15 on Prokhorovka. I think it's probably 2 map changes ago. They've changed the map in Prokhorovka a couple of times. Ostensibly each time they change it is to make the map less campy. And I think in practice what has generally happened is made the map more campy. It used to be that a lot of people would hide out on the back of the map, particularly in the northern side. The southwestern corner was really good, and the northwestern corner, and the northwest of the map in general, on both sides of the road, where all those guys are lit up, were very good camping spots in the old maps, because there were areas of ground like this that were elevated, and in the northern end there's a couple of buildings that acted as cover, semi-solid cover. I think the buildings were breakable, but once you were behind them you weren't spotted, and at that range RNG was enough to miss the buildings completely, so the buildings mightn't necessarily get destroyed, and they weren't really easily visible either. This is actually not a good location despite the presence of a lot of trees and bushes, because you can actually be spotted easily enough from the central ridgeline by tanks with good view range and good crew skills. And this area used to be a great spot because this ridgeline is a kind of a shadow of itself, but you can still see the outline of where the ridgeline would be, was the spot because it was elevated enough to actually let you look out over the field, particularly up at the western end of it. So the teams would camp back at both ends, but it was great for spotting because you could push forward or you could actively scout the ridgeline and you'd pick up a ton of spotting damage on this map. It was great. I didn't mind playing it at all, but a lot of people play artillery or play if you're playing heavy tanks or tanks with turrets, really I'd go forward. But the thing is, if you have a heavy slow tank, you go forward onto the ridgeline, but you don't stick your nose over the ridgeline. You might go up maybe 3/4 or whatever and shoot along the ridgeline towards tanks that are coming up on the opposite side to you. Oh, and I forgot to mention earlier on, you should stick to this video to the bitter end. That's actually the best bits right at the end. But at the moment, the enemy are making one tank is making a strong push down the 2-3 line. And given their numbers, that's what they should be doing. They outnumber us considerably at this end of the map. So if the whole lot of them pushed across from the bowl into the line where that guy just died, they would be... Oh, he's not dead yet. They would actually be in a position to... They'd overwhelm the defence. Now, it isn't the smartest move, because what they really should be doing is pushing down the 1 line, or the 1-2, literally the line between 1 and 2, where that tank's just appeared in front of me. Yeah, that guy. The Tiger P. They should be pushing down where the Tiger P is, because the Tiger P is only barely visible to tanks along the central ridgeline. You have to come up a good bit on the central ridgeline to get a shot at the Tiger P, and you won't get a clean shot at him. You only get a shot at the turret hatches and things like that. So if that 6 or 7 tanks came storming down this side of the line, they're protected from fire from the eastern side of the map, from people in the field. Whereas going down the 2-3 line where the guy came down, he's actually vulnerable to fire from people where we are, or at least we could go over and shoot him from the roadway. People could do the same from the eastern side, but he's also vulnerable to fire from the ridgeline because the tank up at the corner doesn't have to go all the way up. He can go up, say, halfway up the ridgeline, and you can see your man from behind shooting down into his engine deck. But if they'd all pushed together, given that they outnumber us in tanks, they'd probably have pulled it off. However, they have not. They've stayed back and they're playing the cautious game and the sniping game. The trouble is there's only so much you can do that, and then there's a time when you just have to convert that into an actual push. Because there's always a chance the sniping, it relies to a certain extent on luck at these kind of ranges to do damage to a lot of tanks. Like, I've taken a good few hits, but I haven't had any damage done to me yet, partly because when I'm spotted I'm moving, so it makes it harder to land a shot at the weak spots, and at this distance it's harder to actually pick out the weak spots. They're not as visible, they're not as big a target. And then you have the randomness, the random effects of range, the random effects of literally the network communications and stuff like that. They all add in. Now you have a Jumbo Sherman showing me the side of his turret there, and I managed to punish him pretty severely for it. So I reckon the enemy have probably pushed as much as they're going to. If these guys were going to push, they'd have pushed by now. So it's time for me to actually start pushing back, especially since we're running out of tanks in the middle. We have a tank destroyer at the back, and he's spottable. I'm not sure. I'm kind of surprised. He must be pretty heavily armored, the tank destroyer, to survive for that long on that location. The heavy tank down at the railway bridge, some of the tanks he can't see, like the heavy tank opposite, like the heavy tank there in the 5-6 section of the enemy side. If he crests the ridge, I don't think that heavy tank at the back can see him because of the curvature of the railway. He's protected by that, so it's only the medium tank above, or the tank destroyer that we just lost, that would be in a position to see up into that area, the map. But that tank destroyer was going to die anyway. It's just a matter of time, because there's no way he could have stayed where he was without being spotted. And I said the only reason he lasted so long is probably he was a heavily armoured tank, possibly the T-28 or something like that, and there's no artillery in play. So that's another reason why I think it's a bad habit to get too fond of staying at the back of the map for too long. Because especially if there's artillery in play, there's no artillery in this map, so you could probably get away with being at the back and especially in a heavily armoured tank, for longer periods of time. And in some ways there's a lot to be said for being on the forward of the flat bit at the back of the map and being on the ridge line. Because at least you can get down and take cover from some of the flanks or some of the sides, depending on where the enemy forces are concentrated on. It's a difficult enough one to call, and but the enemy, I think, just overdid the centre, and we just had that few extra people on the flanks. Now we've taken the hill on the eastern side, but the trouble is the tank on the hill now is not in a position to really support anyone. The medium is the only guy holding the central ridge, and he's too far west now to be of any use to the guy on the hill, because the tanks being shown are beyond the view range, beyond the render range, actually, I'd say, of the tank on the hill, of the tank destroyer on the hill. So he should be actually coming back to join the rest of us, because I know we had a medium tank that wandered north towards the river and didn't survive the experience, so there's probably tanks up there, and he's probably as well off not engaging in those tanks. There's no reason to believe they've gone anywhere. So I'm coming up here to assess. I got a lucky shot there against the Atomic, but I want to help the AMX CDC, and the Atomic is not paying attention to me. He's going after the AMX CDC, probably because the CDC is easier to kill. And at this stage of the game, well, people frequently go for the easy kill anyway. There's a lot to be said for doing it. It's taking a gun out of the game, so it's generally worth doing. But the thing is, when you're doing it, you're coming up a ridgeline and you're exposing the weaker part of your turret to a tank destroyer. It's probably not the best of ideas. So now it's a question of timing. The biggest problem is if the remaining tanks start circling us. If there's 3 of them pop up in different directions so that they can get side shots into us while we're trying to deal with one of them. And the Atomic has made a mistake here. He's fired back at me and didn't do any damage. But it didn't matter whether he did damage or not. I had so many hit points at this point that I could take the hit, but as soon as he was on his reload cycle, I knew I could push back forward and I'd catch him before his subsequent reload. I would have a faster reload than he would. Boilermaker was trying to do the right thing, but he's left it too late. He didn't crest the ridgeline when we were not looking his way, and now he won't get away because we can see past. We can see into the ground that he will need to cover, the open ground that he will need to cover towards the railway bridge, and we're going to catch him in the open. So that leaves 2 enemy tanks remaining, and they were last seen in the northeastern quadrant of the map. So question is where they are now, and I'm going to go for the middle here, back up to AMX CDC. But I won't be able to keep up with him, and I'm also a bit worried that if the enemy tanks came down over the hill and we all go north towards the cap circle, the 2 of them might just cap it out before we would get back to certainly before I'd get back to reset the cap, although I can more or less reset the cap from here. As long as I have nothing to worry about in terms of being shot from the hill or anything like that. And there's only 2 tanks that have both. That both have to get back to make the capping viable. Now, didn't have the angle on the Scorpion G, but I was taking fire from behind as well, and I've taken a hit from the AMX CDC. We've given him another hit, and he is 2 hits, maybe 3 at most, away from being taken out. Now, in hindsight, I made a mistake by coming forward here. I should not have done so. I should have actually backed on to my side, to the western side of the railroad, and let him come on to me. It would also give the tank to the north of me an opportunity. And he is circling me, because the trouble with being circled in these buildings is that pretty much any tank, the AT-15 doesn't have a fast turn speed, and these buildings are destructible, so people can drive through them. So I can't just put my back to a building and make him reverse his course, or make him drive around the building and then be ready for him to set up and waiting as he comes around again. I actually have to try and stay ahead of him just with turning my tank. And the problem with that is, of course, unless he makes a mistake, which he did there by changing course, by reversing and turning, I managed to catch up with him. I think actually if he reversed and traversed, if he didn't reverse, if he traversed on the spot, he would have changed direction quicker. Although I'm not sure, because it varies from tank to tank. But I think the AMX CDC is quite a fast traverse. Anyhow, we managed to pull that one from the jaws of disaster by the skin of our teeth. 7 tanks destroyed, over 3,000 damage, almost 3,000 damage blocked. We have an ace tanker. We have a Devastator medal for the 7 kills. We have, I think the next one's Cool Headed, Top Gun, and the last medal was a Steel Wall, and we came number 1 by experience. In fact, the Scorpion G had a pretty good game as well. He had over 3k, he had more damage than I did, and he had 5 kills as well. And the AMX CDC, okay, he had quite a lot of damage at my expense, probably close to 1,000 points, but he did alright for himself. So that's it. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like and a share. Feel free to comment. If you've not already done so, please subscribe to the channel. Bye for now, and I'll catch you all again soon.